This is how I turned an empty tank into the ultimate cherry shrimp jungle, complete with moss, plants, shrimp and more. I'll be showing you exactly how I built it from the ground up into a thriving aquatic ecosystem, and how to do it yourself. I started with just an empty 2-foot tank. In order to set up a large planted tank for shrimp, you need a good nutrient-rich base. I used spare aqua soil to fill the bottom of the tank, then spread it out as best as I could. This will give the plants and moss a nutrient-rich base, basically the battery pack for this jungle. Then I topped it off with washed play sand for that wild, natural look. I quickly found out you have to rinse and wash sand before you can put it in the tank, but once the sand was ready, I moved on to the next step, the driftwood. A few days earlier, I started soaking the driftwood in hot water. This drives out tennis and any hitchhikers that we don't want, and it makes the wood sink easier when I put it in the tank. I like to dry fit the pieces to plan escape, and driftwood is an essential part of the build. It helps give that natural feel, gives space and shade for shrimp to graze, and foundations for moss to grow. And speaking of moss, no shrimp jungle is complete without it. For this build, I'm using Java moss glued directly to the wood. As you can see, I think I've done a decent job here. I tried to break the Java moss up and glue it to different spots so that it will grow all around, and this will just give the shrimp somewhere to hide and feed. I'm also using a sponge filter for this setup, and that will be connected to an air pump which stays on constantly. And for the lighting, I've just got a normal aquarium light which is attached to a power plug that runs on a timer, so it just switches itself on every day. Then finally, I put the wood, rocks, plants and moss in, and then filled the tank with dechlorinated water. Then I added some aquarium quick start as well. It was really cloudy for the first few hours, but this is just what happens when you have sand in the tank, and after a few hours the sponge filter cleaned it all up. As for plants, I've chosen some rooted plants in the background to give some shade, including an Amazon sword or two just spread around the tank for a bit of variety. Everything was looking absolutely perfect. The moss and plants were all set up, the lighting and sponge filter was set up, and the water chemistry was also at a good balance. However, before I added any animals, I decided to let it all grow a bit. So I left it for 60 days, and the difference was insane. The moss had exploded, the plants were thriving, and the whole tank had that overgrown jungle vibe I wanted. The moss had grown thick and lush, casting plenty of shade across the tank, and the plants had filled in every empty space. I'd managed all of this without CO2, and it had worked out beautifully. There were now countless little hideaways for the shrimp to explore. Ironically, the jungle had already found its first residents, tiny pest snails that had hitchhiked on some of the plants I'd bought. Surprisingly, this turned out to be a good thing. It was actually pretty cool to see life already thriving in the smallest forms. But now it was time for the most exciting part. I bought a handful of red cherry shrimp and carefully added them to the tank, then watched as they explored every part of the scape. They seemed to love it so much that they actually became really hard to spot since there were so many different hiding areas. Just finding them could actually become a bit of a challenge with all the moss and plants in the way. Overall, I would say they really like it though, and they seem to be doing great since I added them. Hopefully I can end up getting these cherry shrimp to breed soon, so make sure to check out my channel for any future updates. However, the shrimp weren't the only animals I added. I also added some mystery snails for the cleanup crew, and they were also totally enjoying the new environment. Now with plants, moss, shrimp and all sorts of snails, my tank was starting to look exactly as I'd hoped. And finally, I could take a step back and just enjoy the little slice of nature that I built. And now, so can you. From an empty glass box to a thriving shrimp jungle, this tank is now alive. Stable, lush, and only getting better as the colony grows. And this is just the beginning. If you want to see how this world evolves, hit subscribe and check out my channel for the best advice, updates, and tips for keeping shrimp, crayfish, and more.